Hello, everybody. Today's guest is Xiaoying Gu. She's a financial planner and advisor at Redwood Advisory Group based in Redwood City, California. Let's welcome Xiaoying.
Well, thank you, Cindy. It's a pleasure to be invited here and share some experience and with the audience today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today.
My pleasure.
Mind introducing more about yourself?
And my name is Xiaoying Gu. So I'm a financial planner slash advisor. So I've been in the industry for a lot of years because I majored in math, and then my master's degree is in financial engineering. So right after that, I actually worked in the investment banks for a couple of years as an equity derivatives trader. And after I moved to the US, I started to transfer myself from the institutional investor side to the family financial planning. And that's where I see the difference. And I also want to bring my knowledge and experience from the institution side to help family to plan ahead, to help them to protect and grow their wealth, and so that people don't worry more about money.
Mind sharing with us, like, what do you actually do as a financial planner slash advisor, and how do you add value to people's lives?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, that most of our job actually is to help people to protect and build their wealth. And also for some other people, they might have the need to preserve the wealth as well for the next generation. So basically it's just like protect, build, and preserve. This is our work. And how we add value, it doesn't sound like all these three things, it doesn't sound complicated, right? It's easy. But actually, when people are in this process, a lot of them need help to help them to make a decision, because most of them need more information, different kind of information, and that's where we can add value to provide the information and also give them the guidance. Talk about family protection. Usually, people will think about insurance, medical insurance, life insurance, and when people talk about life insurance, they'll just think about like, oh, does it make sense to me? Should I buy? And then which one should I buy? Right? And to answer these questions, they may need different kind of information, but sometimes they don't know where to get it. And sometimes they get too much information, and all these are just piece of information and they cannot combine together. So what we do usually is we sit down with our clients, first of all, not to direct answer these questions, but to know the people, where they are going to, like what is their income, how much they earn, how much they spend, and how much they can save, right? And what is their lifestyle, and for protection, what they want to protect, and if anything happened to them, do they want to keep the same lifestyle, what they are looking for, and also if everything goes well, where is their future? So we're trying to figure out their current situation and their style, and then we'll answer these questions to see if this makes sense for them, right? If life insurance makes sense for them, and if it is, then there are different types of life insurance, like which one will be suitable for them. And every single life insurance have pros and cons, and there's no best or good or bad things. It's always the most suitable for them. Right? Then we will determine like how much, like what is the face amount, what is the best benefit, and then we'll talk about their budget. Right? It depends on their wealth, or how big their asset is, what kind of wealth they own, and how much they save, their budget. Then we'll determine the funding strategy. So all these things will be combined together, that we provide information, we provide guidance and give advice, and then the client themselves can make the right decision for them. Right, so this is the first thing we help, is to provide information. And the second thing we can help is, usually people have the challenge that they might not aware what kind of consequence they will meet if they make such condition, they make such a decision. Typical example is for the retirement. Usually when we were talking about retirement with clients, we will ask like, what do you think will be the biggest expense when you retire? And most people will say, maybe living expense, or maybe travel expense. And we will say, actually from statistic, the biggest expense is medical expense. And people will be surprised. What? I thought my medical expense will be covered by Medicare, right? It is true that the Medicare will cover the essential expense, but however, it doesn't mean you don't have to pay. Actually, a lot of people purchase extra medical insurance, and people still co-pay. They have to pay out of the pocket. So if people lack this piece of information, they make the decision, say, oh, I'll just leave it to Medicare. Then when they do retire, they'll find out, oh, I don't have enough budget for that. So we'll give them the information and we'll let them know there's might be a gap. So then it's client's decision to say, oh, should I like set up a fund just to save for my medical expense for the future? And how can I be prepared for this? So this is our role, right? And another similar situation example is like for education funding as well. Like for family with kids, do you need to set up education funding for your kids' college tuition? We know the college tuition is very, very expensive nowadays. And most of people will say, yeah, I think I will try to save, right? And when the kids goes to college, I'll say, I'll see how much I have. If I can afford, I'll pay. If not, then go with the student loan, right? This is very common thoughts. And we'll say, yeah, this is a decision that they make, right? What else we can provide for information? We'll let them know actually student loan is a very severe problem for the family right now, because a lot of people, they cannot pay off the student loan until they're like age 35 or even 40. And that causes another problem is that they don't have enough time to save for their kids for the tuition. And then it's like a burden, like passing through to the next generation and next generation. And for this whole family, education is always something really like a burden, a heavy thing for them. They cannot afford. So then that question comes to the client. I say, oh, sounds like education is something we need to pay more attention to. Then shall we set up a fund for that, right? If we want to set up a fund, like how much shall we save, right? So what if, is it flexible enough? So what if the kids like they don't even go to college, or if they got a scholarship, then this amount of money, can I still use it for other purpose? Right? All these things we will consider for client. And again, decision maker is always the client themselves, but we are providing some information they may not aware. So that is the job that we have, to provide information and guidance, no matter people are aware of it or not aware of it, but this is the value that we add. So planning ahead is something very basic for us. We actually, our job is kind of to remind people in advance, instead of we always make an analogy like we're like a financial doctor. We're managing the financial health for a family. So when you see a doctor for the health, right, it doesn't mean that you don't manage it for yourself. You need to manage your health for yourself as well, right? And it doesn't mean that if you see a doctor, you will never be sick. You'll always be healthy, right? You still might get sick, but you might get some professional advice, and the doctor might remind you something that you can be prepared in your daily life to keep a healthy habit. And we do exactly the same thing, right? We have annual review with our client as well, and we remind them to see if they have any life change event. Then we'll say, oh, maybe you want to consider this or that. Maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, what kind of situation you might face. So it's more like, so planning ahead is very important for us. So that's why we more focus on planning, implementation, instead of dealing with the real difficulties. Or even though in the reality, a lot of people come to us when they meet challenges, when to meet real problems. But planning ahead is actually is more efficient. It save a lot of time for them so that they can be prepared for the future.
Great. So I guess what I think a lot of people want to know is what is the biggest difference between going DIY and hiring a professional's help like yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, just like the analogy I said, right? It's you can manage your own health by yourself, and you can be good as well, right? And we're doing like a job as a doctor to remind you to do an annual review, to give you some extra information. So it doesn't mean you have to do DIY or you have to hire a professional. It's better to work together. And when talking about DIY, I also want to clarify, like a lot of people come to us saying, I DIY, right? And when they're talking about DIY, most people will think, I manage my stock. I decide when to buy, when to sell, which price and the timing. I would say this is a part of financial planning or managing your wealth. Because like I mentioned earlier, all the examples, I didn't talk about like retirement for where you should invest your money in for the retirement or for education. Actually, this is the later stage of the financial planning. There's a lot of work before that. Is to figure out the needs, to answer the question yes or no, or why, and eventually then we will answer the question of how. Right, so this I want to clarify. So when we say DIY, it's not just managing your stock portfolio. Actually, it's including the whole family wealth. Right, it includes a stock, a mutual fund like cash equivalent, or alternative investment. It also includes your retirement account, like 401k, IRA, Roth, or even defined benefits, and include your education funding, maybe 529. And also some people own life insurance as asset for the permanent life insurance. And also this include the real estate, like primary home and also the investment property. So everything is a package together. And that's what we compare, like our job is to see this holistically and to give an advice instead of just to give a single point in a more niche part of the whole plan. So this I wanted to clarify that. And DIY means manage your home wealth, right? And we're doing the help. Our professional service is like help you to manage as well. So it's not a conflict. It's more like we're working together. And answering your question, Cindy, what is the difference to do DIY and professional help?
Yeah.
There's actually a lot. But the most major part, the most important part, I think, is the information, as I mentioned, or we'll say experience. Usually when people have a question, they usually have two ways to gain information. The first way is to ask for family and friends, right? To ask for their parents or friends, like, have you ever met this kind of situation? And what did you do? And why did you make such decision? Why do you choose this way, not that way? And what is your experience after that? Are you happy? Are you satisfied with it? Right? This is a very good information because it's from experience, the real experience. But also have the drawback that it may be limited because the example that you asked is limited. It's all around you, and that there might be some situation they have never been facing. Right, that's where we can provide extra information because for us, we actually see a lot of real cases and we share experience internally. Because we see the real cases, which means that we see what they're gonna face, what people are gonna face, how they react, how they feel psychologically and physically, what their reaction is. And when they meet an issue, like what if they have made a bad decision for investment and lost like 90% of the net asset, and what if someone gets sick in the family? What's going to happen, and how people are going to afford the tuition for the kids' college, and what kind of lifestyle people will have when they retire, or what kind of challenge they face. So all these things will help us to go back to the younger generation and help them to plan ahead. So that will be a huge difference, right? And also, people, there's another way that people gain information nowadays is go to internet and Google search, right? And that's another good thing is you have much more access compared to before that you will see a lot of people sharing their experience online and express their opinions. But also sometimes you get too much information and you don't know, and it's all piece of information and you don't know how to combine them. Right. So and for us, the other way that we get trained is we have a more systematic training and from the theory or we see the book knowledge and combined with the real case experience that we have. So usually we can give you some advice on how to see it holistically, right, and put all these pieces of information together. I would say this is a major difference. And also another thing we can provide is we work with a lot of CPAs and attorneys as well together myself as a financial advisor, is especially for complicated cases that usually when we talk about finance, actually the legal and the tax are all included as well. And this cross-field experience is something that for individual, it's hard to access. So here that we can, but it doesn't mean that all the professionals have this ability. So when you choose a professional service, make sure that they have a holistic view, right? So on this part, we can help. And other than that, sometimes our support and help is not just about numbers. It's about emotions as well. Because in the reality, in the practical, we see some people go very extreme. Because we do have get the situation where someone just be very, very conservative. I do have see people that just leave their money in the checking account for the last 10 years. And most people cannot imagine that. Wow. But this family actually, they have experienced the 08 subprime crisis. And they're just so afraid because they lost so much in that financial crisis. That's why they become super, super conservative. So I met them last year because they just feel like something doesn't go well, right? Something must be wrong. Why? And because the stock market looks very different last 10 years compared to from 2000 to 2010, right? Because this is like somewhere they're affected by the emotion and goes too extreme. And I also see cases where like people will just get super in a single asset and like all in, right? In maybe just in one single stock or in the crypto or this kind of thing, right? It doesn't mean there's no like right or wrong. This is a choice. And when we are seeing this, we will give some advice. We'll say, maybe you should get something more balanced. We are usually on a more neutral and third-party view to get more balanced. Like you can go extreme risky, it's fine. And however, make sure no matter how it performs, good or bad, you're still good with your life. You keep your lifestyle, retirement, kids' education, and then go either super risky or conservative, it's fine. So this is the emotion side that we usually give advice. And
so in regards to the couple that just put their money in checking account, what did they do after they met you?
Well, I helped them to do to little by little go little by little more into the investment side, right? Because they are kind of in the mindset where we don't want to lose money, right? I would say their income wise is good actually. Just they're super conservative in the investment. So I find also some solutions for them to make sure they don't lose money, to get some guarantee on the investment return. But they are also okay with that. They got a guarantee, but they are not expecting like 20%, 30% every year for the annual return. They are okay with the return for like 5%. Then that's a deal, right? Because you have to compare the pros and the cons. And for them, like they start from extreme conservative. So we go to a little bit conservative, and later on when they are more comfortable, because it takes time from year to year, then I'll give them to diversify their asset. Some will go risky on the top, and some will be conservative on the bottom. So that is usually it's like building a foundation, like building a house. The foundation has to be solid and conservative, but from the top you can be fancy and risky and do whatever stuff you want. So this is what we say the holistic planning for this family.
In regards to financial planning for like single millennials, like who doesn't have kids and are not married, what are some of your best applicable practical tips for them?
So for the millennials who are single, don't have kids, right? It means this is their current situation, but it doesn't mean it means that some of them might thinking of getting married in the near future or later, or not sure. I'm not sure. Some maybe say, I'm sure I won't get married. Some will say unsure. Some will say I have a plan in 5 or 10 years. And same for the kids. Some are like, I'm sure I won't, or I don't want to have kids. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna have kids in 2, 3, or 5 years, right? So according to this different situation, your financial planning will be different. If someone is sure that I'm going to be single, or I'm sure I don't have kids, and then for your retirement, you don't have to spend, you don't have to save for the kids' education, which means you have extra funding. However, for your retirement, you may want to save more, because usually for retirement, there are two major things. One is the family emotional support, physical support. The other is the financial support, right? So, but if you don't have kids, even though for those couples who have kids, maybe kids won't make the role, right? But still, if you don't have kids, then for sure you financially you need to be more prepared, so that if you need someone to take care of you, then you have the economic support for you to hire someone professional to take care of you, right? And for those millennials who are saying, I don't know, I may have kids or not, I'm not sure, but it doesn't mean that you don't have but you still need a plan, which means this plan should be more flexible, right? So even so, when you have kids, maybe a part of it can be transferred to education funding. And to raise a kid is expensive too, so your living expense is going to increase as well, right? But maybe later on you figure out that, oh, maybe I won't have kids, but then still this part can be stay in the retirement planning. So be more flexible. So it depends on, you need to know where you are, and at least for now your ideas. So make sure that you're going to focus on purely retirement, or together combined, be more flexible to consider both retirement and education. All right, this is something, the tip. The other thing I want to mention is a holistic mindset. I see a lot of people, like they are very, nowadays people are very like people learn things very fast, right? And they have a lot of knowledge, but usually it's in some specific field. And it will be great for people, not just to go deep for one single field, but be more holistic, right? For not only about assets, but also about tax, about legal, right? And when we talk about assets, some people just focus on real estate. Some people just focus on stock market, right? Some people just focus on like insurance. Actually, you should have all some basic knowledge, so that you will have a holistic mindset.
Good tip. Yeah, I personally also know um, like some about the different instruments, so I educate myself that way.
Right, that's why you are doing this YouTube channel, right? To give more information to the audience.
Yeah, and I want to educate people and add value instead of like giving them fish, right? I'd rather teach them how to fish.
Sure.
Yeah. And in regards to married couples with kids, what's your best practical and tips that they can start doing like from now on?
For married couple with kids, I would say the priority is always protection, because you have the responsibility, right? So and make sure you have enough protection, because we've seen cases where the protection doesn't really only mean financially, because we have seen couples with kids where the husband is so capable, where he takes care of everything, and suddenly some accident happens and the wife doesn't know anything. They don't even know how many bank accounts they have. She doesn't even know how to pay the bills, right? So make sure that you are well protected, not only financially, but as a whole, right? And to guarantee if anything happens, your kids are still maintain the same lifestyle. They don't have to sell the house or move to another school district. Then everything going to change a lot, right? So protection is always the priority. And the second thing is, as I mentioned earlier, like you make sure you have a balance between education and retirement for your savings. Right, because this is all, usually education comes earlier, because when kids go to college, the parents haven't retired yet. But make sure you have the appropriate allocation for education, because otherwise, if you don't have enough for your retirement, it will be miserable. So make sure you have the balance, right? And also, usually for couple with kids, it's more, they're in a more established status for as a life stage. So make sure that you still have a reasonable growth. Don't be too conservative and don't be too risky. And also consider the tax effect, because usually these people are in a higher tax bracket. So make sure that you have proper tax planning so that it can save you some tax.
Any tips on how to save on taxes?
It's going to be a huge topic, but basically there is some vehicles that you can use either to save tax for now or either to save tax for later, right? But all these tax efficient vehicles, they have pros and cons too. The pros is usually you can save tax, right? But the cons is it's usually a long-term investment, midterm or long-term investment, and the money is locked for your retirement. And it's not quite flexible. So make sure you have the balance, not purely for tax purpose, then you don't have the flexibility, but consider the tax and also allocate the tax to save it now or save it for future, because people tend to save tax for now because they are in a very high tax bracket. And for the high tax bracket, what we can save tax for now is like 401k, IRA, or defined benefits. But make sure you don't save too much. You have to have a good percentage. Otherwise, you might facing higher tax in the future when you retire, when you withdraw money from the bracket. And also there is a requirement minimum distribution, which means the cash flow, how much you can withdraw is not under your control. Sometimes you are forced to withdraw. So you have to consider this. And when you're considering save tax for future, it may be a Roth IRA, it may be a 529 education funding, or it may be a cash value life insurance. But each of them has pros and cons as well. You have to consider like how much percentage you allocate to this whole bracket, and for each small basket, how much allocation you put into that as well. So this is a holistic planning, right? And according to each family's need, it might be a little bit different.
Thank you for sharing. Any final thoughts you would love to share to the audience?
I want to say maintain your financial health is a lifetime project. This is how we serve client as well. We don't serve client just one shot. You come to visit us, we give some advice, and then say goodbye to each other. It's actually a lifetime where you get married, buy a house, have first kids go to school, you go to college, you get retired, or you change your job, or someone pass away. All these things, all the life event, there must be financially supported as well. And that's where we can help. And just like a doctor do, we're a financial doctor, we are more like a supporting role to help you, to give you information, to advise you, so that you are aware what kind of decision you are making for your current situation and for your future. So keep that in mind to build your muscle strong, and also to keep a healthy habit.
Great. So I guess in regards to if anyone in the audience, want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to reach you?
I can give you my email address, so you can shot me an email, and then we can keep contact with each other. You find me loser, set me free. You make me win every way. You show me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day.
Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show.
Yeah, thank you, and hope you're gonna shoot a lot of videos to do the education and help teach people how to fish.
Have a great